on differentiate learning online, how online tools can allow us to provide a bespoke learning experience. And this session is going to be an hour long, so it's going to take us from now, which is 11:30 your time, to 12:30. If you weren't with me this morning for the first session, just a little bit of an introduction as to who I am, sat in front of you right now. My name is Dan Fitzpatrick. I'm a Google certified trainer, and I do a lot of training with Canopy. And also I am on the senior leadership team of a secondary school in the northeast of England. So in the UK, just about 20 minutes from a big city called Newcastle upon Tyne. So I work just outside of there in a secondary school, which is 11-year-olds to 16-year-olds. And I teach various different subjects, including philosophy and business studies. So some of the examples that you will see in this session will be from those subjects. If you would like to connect after this session, like Emma said at the start of the day, Twitter is an amazing place to go and to connect with each other, to share ideas. I admit I'm on there all the time, trying to get good ideas from other teachers from all around the world. Then if you follow me at Dan FitzTweet, I'll follow you back, and then it's a great way to build our community, to learn from each other, and to keep the dialogue going in the long term, especially, I guess, at the moment, all the difficult times that we're going through and kind of having to relearn a lot of these skills. It is great that we can learn from each other, because you might get one teacher on one side of the world coming up with a great idea, great way of doing things, and they might put a YouTube video on, share it to Twitter, and it's an amazing way to just continually learn, which I'm doing, and hopefully I can learn a bit from you today as well. So what we're going to do over the next hour is, number one, we're going to look at how to assign work to different students in Google Classroom. So just that basic ability to differentiate by giving different resources or different work to different students. Okay. And then we'll have a look at a Google Form pathways in an asynchronous lesson. Okay, now that might not make any sense to you at the moment. If you're using Google Forms, then it might do, but we'll jump into that. And that number two really excites me. All right, I think it's the potential for differentiated learning paths using that tool is just amazing, absolutely amazing. So I'm really looking forward to getting into section 2 in just a little while. And then section 3, we're going to look at how you can, within a live lesson, within a synchronous lesson, how you can differentiate by choosing which groups of students you're talking to and which groups of students you're supporting or challenging. And we can do that through breakout rooms in Google Meet as well. And we'll get into that in the different ways you can do that as well, because there are different ways you can provide what we call as breakout rooms, so you can talk to different students. So those will be the three things. Obviously, there are a lot of different ways that you can differentiate learning through these tools, but I thought it best for this session just to try and keep it simple. So we'll just look at 3 examples. We'll delve into them. We'll have a play around. I'll come away from this presentation and we'll actually go into the tools, and you can see me having a play around with them and the different ways you can do that. If at any time you're like, whoa, Dan, slow down, could you go back? Please just jump in the chat. Just let me know. Just say, could you repeat that bit again? Or what did you say there? I'm well aware that I'm from a place in England where we have a bit of a strange accent. So if there's anything I do say or that you don't understand, just let me know, and I'll try and repeat it with my best English accent. I'll try it at least anyway. Okay. Yeah, let's first of all, just as a reminder, now you've probably been told this about a million times today, you probably already knew this, but just so that we're all on the same page, because some of the examples I'm going to look at today will will be more relevant to either an asynchronous or a synchronous style lesson, as you can see by the headings of the three different sections. So just as a reminder, synchronous learning is when the teaching and learning occurs together simultaneously. So that might happen over a Microsoft Teams video lesson, over a Google Meet, and over a Zoom call, however you are kind of interacting live with your students. And all the students are there together. So just as an example of that, at my school, we try to do this as much as possible. Now, we do have a mixture of asynchronous learning and synchronous, but especially during the height of the COVID lockdown, we tried to keep students' timetables as much as we could, just so that students had a routine at home, so that they were kind of getting ready for school at the same time as they normally would be if they were coming into the lesson, and then they were moving into the next lesson at the same time, just to try and keep that normality within kind of a world that wasn't normal. And I guess you guys know that more than we do with what's happening. So yeah, I find synchronous learning to be a great way to keep that normality. However, it's not always possible, and it's not always the best way to learn. Sometimes students want to go off and learn in their own time, and just like adults, I guess we have. I work better sometimes in the evening, depends what I'm working on, but students are the same, I guess, aren't they? And so giving them that freedom is definitely possible, and we'll look at how we can differentiate in an asynchronous learning environment as well, which, just as a reminder, is when students are accessing the learning at different times. Okay, so if the first thing I would like to do is to share this link to a Google form with you. So I'm just going to put it in the chat now. So there it is. So I've just popped it in this Google Meet chat there. So if you click on that, it's going to take you through to a Google form. And if you were with me for the first session, a couple of these questions are the same. If you don't want to repeat yourself, don't feel like you have to. But I'm not entirely sure who's with me and who was in the last session. So it's a nice way just to get to know everybody a little bit. So the first question I've put there is, what subject do you teach? Then I've put in, which tools do you use to make yourself present to students who are working independently online? And then my favorite question at the bottom there, when it comes to teaching your students online, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And I will give you a minute just to complete that, okay? If a minute, and it'd be great to see as many of you as possible filling that out. So if you just click it, it shouldn't matter what device you're on. If you click that link, it should just open the Google form. You should be able to complete that. Okay, thank you for doing that. It's great to see your responses come in and to see the Google form responses form come alive with the different graphs and everything that you've told me. So I can see like a real range of subjects here. So we've got Arabic, chemistry, elementary English preschool, then in terms of what tools you're using to communicate with students. We've got Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meets, WhatsApp, Zoom and Google Classroom. That's amazing, a great broad range there. And then my favorite, which is very much a selfish question, because I love to say this and take the advice for myself as well. So some of the best advice: make it fun and engaging as much as possible. I love that. Be cooperative with students. Yeah, that student-teacher collaboration is essential, isn't it? Especially kind of the third one here, motivation, as a great way to give intrinsic motivation to make students feel like they're a part of it. That's amazing. Try to make it interactive. Yeah, student interaction. Make them feel loved, safe, and appreciated. 100%, especially during these times. And make sure it's interactive as possible. Nice big theme coming out there in terms of engaging and interactivity, which is fantastic. Hopefully, some of these tools that we're going to look at in this hour will help to do that, and hopefully you'll gain some new ideas there. Just going back to the what tools are you using question, because there's such a wide range there, I just want to kind of say that if you're using Google Meet, so quite similar to Zoom and to Microsoft Teams video calls, so there's a lot of the features in there are kind of the same. Okay, so because I use in my school is a Google for Education school, although I do use some of the other tools as well. I will primarily because I'm using them all day, every day, I'll kind of slip into talking about Google a lot. But I wanted to make you aware that if I talk about Google Meet, then you can do similar things in Zoom and Microsoft Team video calls, as I'm sure you know. Also, if I talk about Google Chat, it's very similar to WhatsApp, but it's just within Google for Education. And yeah, so let's dive into it. So first thing I want to look at is how to assign work to different students in Google Classroom. Okay, and like I say, you can do this very similarly in Microsoft Teams. So let me just jump over here to the Google Classroom. So I'm just going to share this page with you now. So this is an example of a Google Classroom. So like I said before, I'm a philosophy teacher. Although this isn't actually one of my classrooms, this is just a classroom I use for training. So you might see some things in there related to business studies and all of that. So we've got the stream page here where you can post different announcements to students, so general announcements. In my session this morning, looked at how you can do that and the different types of media you can add to those announcements. And very similar in Microsoft Teams, you've got the chat function as well, that stream at the start of your Teams. If I go over to the classwork, this is where obviously all of the work is set, okay? And just as if you're not familiar, you can also then click people and you can see who are your co-teachers in the classroom, who are your students, and then you've also got a grade book at the end there where grades automatically populate based on when you are marking the work. So if I'm going to go back over to the classwork page, and I want to set some work here. So I'm in this scenario, I want to set my students, I want them to write some paragraphs based on market research for their business studies coursework. Okay, so I'm going to click create, and I want to create an assignment. So I'm going to market research write up, because I want them to write this up. I'm going to click add, and I'm going to click Google Drive. And you can see here that I have just on the right here, in fact, I'll make it list view. So you can see I've got a market research prompt sheet. I've also got a market research prompt sheet scaffolded. So I'm sure you will be well aware that scaffolding a piece of work is a great way to differentiate. So if I want some of my students to be challenged, I'm going to give them just the original market research prompt sheet, which doesn't have the scaffolding in it. And I'll show you what the scaffolding is in just a second. So I'm going to insert that there. And so I've attached that file. I'm going to click where it says student can view file. I'm going to make a copy for each student so that they each get their own copy and can work in them independently. And then just at the top here where it says for year 10 philosophy, so it's going into this Google Classroom, I'm going to click all students, and it brings up a list of all the students in this Google Classroom. I'm going to untick where it says all students, and then I just want to select a few students, so my higher ability students, because this market research prompt sheet doesn't have the scaffolding. So I want to just give this to my higher ability students. So I'm going to choose Jess, Ben, and Andrew. And I'm going to leave this ungraded. I'm going to give it a due date of Monday, let's say by the end of the day. And I'm going to create a topic to go with this. I'm going to call it Market Research Task. Assign. And you will see that appear on the Classwork page. And what it has done is, because I created a topic, you can see here it has the Market Research Task, Market Research Write-Up. Okay, if I click on that, you can see here it says 3 students. And if I click on that, it's going to tell me the 3 students who it's assigned to. So that has only been assigned to those 3 students. And what that means is the other students in the classroom cannot see that. Okay, they cannot see that. They also cannot see the topic heading. So the topic heading of Market Research Task cannot be seen by those students, and then the assignment cannot be seen by them. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to put the scaffolded research task in for those students who need that bit of extra support. So I'm going to click Create at the top again, go to Assignment and Market Research, and I'm going to call it, in fact, what I'll do is I'm going to call it pretty much the same thing. So Market Research Task, and I'm just going to give it a little star like that. And that's just indicating to me as the teacher that I know that that's the scaffolded one. But the students don't need to know that. The students just see the work that they are getting. So I'm going to add from Google Drive. And I have my scaffolded worksheet here. So I'm going to double click that. And just to show you what that looks like. And you can see here that it has the similar paragraph headings, but there are some sentence starters in there that are going to prompt those students to be able to write those paragraphs, whereas I feel the other students probably don't need that and need the challenge of starting off their own sentences. So I'm going to go back to the Google Classroom and give it the same due date, same time, ungraded. This time I'm going to choose, so I'm going to click off all students, and then I'm going to select just Laura and Stephen at the bottom there, and those are the students who I want this scaffolded version to go to. So I've just selected them, and just as a confirmation at the top it says 2 students, yep. And I'm going to click Assign. And that's going to appear in the stream. Now you can see here, because I didn't create a topic, it's just popped up at the top there. So I'm just going to pull that down. So if I drag, I can drag and drop it. So if I click on it, drag it down, and I'm just going to drop it under the Market Research Task. And because there's that star on, I know that that's the scaffolded version for those students. When students go to their Google Classroom, they will not see both of them. So you can see here, you've got the scaffolded task and then the non-scaffolded task. When students go on there, they will just see the task that's being assigned to them. Okay, I really think that's it's valuable that students don't see that. I think sometimes when speaking from my own experience, trying to give out a scaffolded worksheet within a lesson, I think some students can feel a bit self-conscious, especially and I don't know about you, but I try to do it discreetly. So I kind of go over and just kind of slip them a scaffolded sheet. But the chances are they're sat next to somebody else who might not have a scaffolded sheet, and it can just make some students a bit self-conscious. So the fact that they cannot see that they have been given different work to other students. Now, obviously they can chat, and they're going to chat, and they might see that, but it's not obvious. There's no obvious way to tell for students that they have not been given the scaffolded or they have been given the scaffolded. So it's a nice way for that to remain slightly anonymous, so that they don't get self-conscious about that. And that can also, so obviously we can put instructions in here as well. So our instructions can be differentiated based on the students that we are communicating with. And then we can mark them and give them feedback just exactly in the same way. And some students will be none the wiser that they have been given the support. And some students will be none the wiser that they've been actually challenged by not being given that support. Okay, so a nice way to give the challenge and the support there. Just with a very simple feature, I'm sure you'll agree, it's very simple, but could be highly effective when differentiating work online. And this will obviously work in both an asynchronous way, so when students are just getting on with this task in their own time, but also in a synchronous way. So for example, if I'm doing a live Google Meet lesson or a live Zoom lesson with my students, and I say, okay, right, your task is now in the Google Classroom posted, all of the students in that Google Meet or Zoom session are going to go to their Google Classroom and they're going to open it, being none the wiser that they've got actually a slightly different task to another student based on whether they need to be stretched or supported. Okay, so that is just using that very simple feature of selecting students. If there are any questions, I'm just going to pause there for a little bit. As if anyone's got any questions based on that, please do pop them in the chat. Okay, so I've just put a list in this slide deck, which will be available to you afterwards. Kind of the different things that we've had a look over when it comes to assigning work to different students in Google Classrooms. Okay, let's have a look. So this is the bit at the start of the session. This is the bit that I said excites me a lot. Now, obviously, this all excites me to be able to differentiate for our students. But I think this is the takeaway. I think that could revolutionize how we differentiate within a lesson, and it's within a Google form, and it's creating pathways in an asynchronous way. And I want you to have a go at this. Okay, so I want you to see a simple version that I've created for you to have a go at. So I'm just going to paste the link to this in the chat right now. So if you go to the chat, if you click on that link, it's going to take you to a Google form. And that Google form, when you click on it, is just going to have one question on it. It's my Google Assistant on my phone trying to get involved there. So this Google form just has just one question, and it's a business studies question. And if you know it, you know it. If you don't know it, you don't know it. It doesn't matter. But it'd be nice to get a mixture of people who know it and a mixture of people who don't know it, so that you can see where this leads. So the question is very simple: which formula will a business use to calculate gross profit? And you're given 4 multiple choice options. So if you click on one and click next,
Sorry, yes. I just wondered, because a lot of people will be watching this back by video, could you show it on your screen as well? Just
of course, yes.
Because they might not be able to access that. Lovely. Thank you.
There we go. So if that's the question there, so if you click your answer and then click next, and I don't want to go on to the next bit just yet. I want you to just discover it for yourself. So if you have a go at it and then follow the instructions after you click next, and I'll give you a minute just to go through that and have a play around with it, okay? Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to click the link, go through, have a go at the question, and then see what happens after that. So hopefully what you should have experienced was you would have got a different pathway depending on the answer that you gave. So let me just go through this with you, and then what we'll do is after we have a look at it from the student side of things, we'll go and have a look at it from the teacher side of things. So we'll delve into the section of the form where you can edit it, and we'll see what that looks like and how you could create your own. So the question, which formula will a business use to calculate gross profit? Now, I'm just going to select the top one, and I'm going to see if I've got the question right. So I'm going to click next. And it says, unfortunately, that wasn't correct. Okay, so I know the student now has that immediate feedback. They know that the question that they answered wasn't correct. Okay, but that's not the end. What can now happen is, and the instructions say, watch this video below, up to 33 seconds, to learn the formula for gross profit and answer the question below. So hopefully the students, and hopefully some of you had a go at this as well, can click play, listen to and watch the first 33 seconds of the video and learn how gross profit is calculated. And then underneath, simply I've repeated the question. So I'm gonna assess them again. So this is a bit of reteach. So in a lesson, in a live lesson, we would, if a student got a question wrong, we would address that misconception by maybe doing a little bit of reteach with them. And that could just be very quickly 30-second thing in the lesson and then move on. But we'd always want to reassess them as well, wouldn't we? Just to make sure that they know that we know that they've understood before we move on. This does that essentially. Okay, so it essentially reteaches them by them watching the video, and then the similar question. Okay, so now, do you understand? That bottom question is, so now do you understand it? And so you get a chance to show you the knowledge that they have just relearned. And then they can answer that question. Okay, I'm going to go back on this to show you what it would be like if you got the question right. So sales revenue is sales revenues minus the cost of goods sold. So I'm going to click next. And it immediately tells me, well done for remembering gross profit formula. So again, immediate feedback, immediate praise. And this is all created in advance. So you don't, this is an asynchronous lesson. So you don't actually have to be there. And in the first session this morning that I talked about teacher presence. This is a great example of that you have got a teacher present through the media on the screen. However, not there in real time. So what we see here is that they are then asked a stretch question. So, okay, you've got that question right. Can you now stretch your knowledge? And there's a bit of content given. So if you click that link, it would have took you to a page that showed you how to calculate the gross profit margin formula. And then there's a question based on that. So, and then that is submitted. Now that is just a very, very basic way to do this. We had two pathways there, one question, two pathways. I also inbuilt, so if you answered the question incorrectly to begin with, and then after the reteach video managed to get it right, it then also jumped you over to the challenge question as well, so that you didn't miss out on getting challenged as well. So there was that route that you could have taken as well. So that was very simply made, probably by me yesterday, in about 10 minutes. Okay, so and that was just one question. So if you want to build in a few different questions, and you could have various different routes there, and I'll show you how that can happen. So I'm just going to go back to the form, and I'm going to click the pen icon in the bottom right hand corner, which takes me over to the edit view of the Google form, and you can see it here. And we've got section 1 at the top, section 2 underneath, and section 3 at the bottom. So what I had to do is I had to create, now section 1 was already there when I started the form, but I had to go and create 2 more sections. And I'm going to show you how to do that by going back to the Google Classroom. And there we go. So you can see my Google Classroom. I'm going to click create, and I'm going to click quiz assignment. So if I click quiz assignment, It brings open the dialog box for me to create an assignment within Google Classroom, but it also attaches into there, you can see at the bottom, blank quiz, and that's Google Forms. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. Now I can go back and I can fill in this. So I might just call it business quiz. Now give my instructions here as we've already done, and then I'm going to go over to this sheet. So this is the blank quiz that it opened. As you can see, it is completely blank. It started a question for us there. I'm going to change the title here. So that title, business quiz. Great little tip. If where it has the title in the top left hand corner, if that's blank, when you click that, it just takes the title from the quiz and puts it in there for you. So business quiz, and then I can give some instructions here. And then I've got my first question. Okay, so I want my first question to be, let's make it simple. So what is capital of France? Okay, and I want that to be multiple choice. It's already set on multiple choice there. But if I want to change the style of question, I can click on it and I get lots of different styles of questions I can ask there. And I'm going to put some options in here. So let's put London, Paris, Washington, DC. And just underneath, I'm going to click answer key, and I'm going to let Google Forms know that Paris is the answer. And just in the top right-hand corner of this box, I can assign it a point. So I'm going to give it assign it 1 point. I can also add answer feedback there as well if I wanted to. So students would see that after they've completed the form. I'm going to click done, and there it is. I want this question to be answered, so I'm going to click required, and that little toggle, purple toggle button there jumps over, and now this question is required. So I've got my first question. Now I want to direct students to different sections based on answers. So I need to create my sections. And just on the right-hand side here of this menu bar, so just to take you through this quickly, if you're not familiar with it, you can add a question at the top. You can import questions from another Google form. You can add text, you can add an image, you can add a video, or you can create a section, which is what we want. So I'm going to create a new section, and underneath there, you can see there that we've got section 2. This is going to be my reteach section. So for students who've got the question wrong, and then I'm going to add, so going back to my toolbar, I'm going to add a question. In fact, what I'll do is I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to duplicate this top question. So if I click on it and I get the copy icon here next to the bin icon, if I click that, it duplicates the question. I'm just going to pull it down underneath reteach. So I'm just going to pull it down to there because I want to assess that learning again. Now I need some material to reteach students. So what I can do here is just find a web page. So I'm aware you can't say this right now. I'm just about to come back into this form, and I'm going to add here some text. So I'm going to click the text icon, and I'm going to type in read this web page to discover the capital of France. And then I'm just going to put the link to a web page just underneath there, just like that, in the description bit of that text. And so I am asking students there to be able to read it and then test their knowledge again. I want to create another section for stretch. So I'm just at the bottom here, I'm going to click new section and my stretch challenge. And then I can add another question there to stretch my students. So I'm going to add another question. What is the population of Paris, France? And I'm going to make this a short answer so they actually have to write in the population. and I'm going to, just on the bottom here, these 3 dots, if I click that, I can, if I click description, it brings up a new field there for me to add a bit of description to this question. So I'm just going to let them research it themselves. Research the answer to this question on the internet. Okay, so I've got my 3 sections. I've got my original section, which has the first question where I assess the student's knowledge. I've got a reteach section, and I've got a challenge section. Now I need to go back to section 1 and click the 3 dots, which is, when you're using Google Tools, there's always the more options or the more features button. So if I click that, and I'm going to click go to answer, go to section based on answer. So when I do that, I get this new kind of menu appear next to the answers to this question. Now, there's a different option next to each answer. So let's say the London answer. Now we know that's incorrect, so I'm going to direct students to the reteach section there. For the correct answer of Paris, I'm going to direct them to the challenge. And then to the Washington D answer, which is also incorrect, I'm going to direct them to reteach. And that way, when they've answered the question, just like you did earlier in the example, when they click on next after they've answered the question, it will take them to the section that you want them to go based on their answer. And I also want, in the reteach, I just want to do the same. So I'm going to click the 3 dots, go to the section based on answer, and I'm going to, if they get it wrong, I'm just going to ask them to submit the form, and then that's something I can pick up. So if they still haven't understood, even after that reteach, then I can pick that up maybe in a synchronous lesson or in a drop-in session that I have created. So, and then I want to, if they get it right, take them to the challenge so they get a chance to, after the reteach, to have a go at the challenge as well. And then if I go to the preview button at the top, so this little eye icon, I'm going to click that, and we're going to see what it looks like. And I'm going to share that with you now, so on the screen, so you can see what this looks like. So what is the capital of France? I'm going to click Paris, click next, and then it's taken me to the challenge page. If I go back and I click London, which is incorrect, click next, it's taken me to the reteach page. And then if I do eventually get it right after looking at the content and the reteach, then it'll take me to the challenge as well, and then submit. So this is just going to go back to the original slides. This is a really nice way to be able to design pathways for our students. And these don't have to be. I've come across some teachers who've created amazing pathways where it takes students off into various different sections, and what you can do there is, if you're using Screencastify, for example, to record your own video, when you're doing the reteach or the challenge, you can put your own video in there. So you could upload that to YouTube, embed it in there, so it's actually you doing the reteach in a recorded video, or you doing the challenge material in a recorded video. So you can embed that in there, and you can have there's no end, I guess, to how much you can stretch students and take them off on a different path, or how much you can reteach students and take them off on a different path. The more junctions you put into that Google form, the longer it's going to take you to make it. So just to add that warning on there. And then obviously, if you're putting your own content in terms of your own Screencastify videos, if they're not already created, not already ones you have in the bank, then you're going to have to create them, which is obviously going to add more workload there. However, I would suggest, if you want to do that, amazing, and that would create an amazing learning experience that's differentiated for each one of your students. However, I just like to keep it simple. So like that example I gave you earlier was just very simple. It was one question with 2 pathways. Now, when I'm using this in an asynchronous online lesson, I would probably just either have 2 or 3 of those. So it would just be, and I would use it as a way to recap questions. So in my school, we always start a lesson with recap questions just to assess the learning from previous lessons. Or I could use it as an exit ticket. So at the end of a lesson, so if students are working on a project or have done a bit of asynchronous learning, I could say, right, well, when you finished, go to this Google form and answer these questions. And it's just a way. So in a class, I would be assessing what they've learned in the lesson, and I would be in real time address misconceptions there and then. However, in an asynchronous environment, I can't do that because I'm not actually there with them. It's not a live space. However, in building those pathways kind of allows me to be there in a virtual way. So especially if I've created my own videos and put them in there. So it allows that instant feedback that they would get in a real classroom, because they know by going to a certain section whether they got it right or wrong, and then it allows them to improve their knowledge, try it again as well, which I think is really important for students to not only be to experience the reteach, but then get the ability to show off their knowledge once they've learned it, and then also bring in that challenge as well. So I think hopefully you can see why I get excited about this tool and about the different pathways within Google Forms, because in an asynchronous lesson, for me it's the closest thing I've come across to actually being able to address misconceptions without actually being there, and to stretch and support students who need it. So please do have a play around with that, because that is an amazingly powerful tool there, just using a Google form. There's also the Microsoft Forms. So if you're using the Microsoft platforms, Microsoft Forms do pretty much the same thing. Okay, remember, like I said at the start, very interchangeable with the tools here. Okay, the last thing I want to go on. So there was 3 things that I wanted to touch on with you, is the breakout rooms in a Google Meet synchronous lesson. Okay, so we just looked at how Google Forms can help in an asynchronous lesson. I want to now kind of jump into a synchronous lesson. At the start, when you did that survey, a lot of you said you were using Google Meet or Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So no doubt you will have experience of doing live lessons with your students, and probably quite a lot of experience doing that. This is just a way of how you can kind of take that to the next level. And forgive me if you're doing this already, so that this is for those who have never done this. So let me just quickly jump into that. So breakout rooms in a Google Meet synchronous lesson. So what you're able to do here is you're able to identify groups of students who may need more help or extra challenge. So that can happen within the start of the lesson. So if you're doing some recap questions, for example, and let's say you've got a few students who just haven't got it, who don't understand, and have got misconceptions that you're going to need to address for them to continue, especially in that lesson. And what I'll do is, after we've looked at this, I'm going to show you an example of a live synchronous lesson plan and how this stuff can fit in. And I've got it on a slide, okay, coming up. So we'll go over that just when I've finished this. So students who need more support or challenge can be brought into a separate Google Meet or Zoom call or Microsoft Teams call. Resources can be shared through that breakout meet, and this meet can be left open for questions just from those students. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my Google Classroom, and I'm going to share this tab with you here so you can see it on the screen. And Google Classroom has Google Meet integrated. So just at the top here, you can see the Meet icon. And if I go to the settings cog in the top right-hand corner, and I scroll down, you can see that I can turn the Meet function within Google Classroom on and off. So obviously I want it to be on. I'm going to click Save. And then just at the top there, and students will be able to see this when it's switched on as well. I'm going to click the Google Meet and go into it. And I'm going to click Join Now. So I am in a Google Meet, and there might be a little bit of a time lag, but it's because I've got 2 Google Meets open now. So my computer is really being challenged. So I'm in this Google Meet, and I'm with my whole class, and I am delivering some new content. And I've identified through a form of assessment, that could be Google form, I identified that some students need some reteach or need some extra challenge. And I don't want to do that within this Google Meet, because all of the class are in there. I want to be able to speak to them in a space where only they're with me. Now, that could be 1 student, it could be 2 students, it could be half the class, I guess. And just like I said before, some students can be self-conscious, can't they? So to do this in front of the rest of the class might not always be appropriate for that student. So to be able to take them into another space is quite vital for this, I think. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to create, so some versions of Google Meet, if your school has got the paid version, the enterprise version, you will get breakout rooms already integrated into your Google Meet live lesson. However, I'm going to show you how you can do it without having that feature, without having that paid feature, okay, which is very simple. Is just essentially by creating another Google Meet. Okay, so if I'm going to open a new tab and share this with you. And if I just go to Meet, in fact, let's use the icon. So the top right-hand corner here, we've got the waffle icon, which gives me access to all of the Google for Education apps if I'm logged into the Chrome browser. And I'm just going to scroll down to the Google Meet icon here, and I'm going to click that. And this opens up this homepage for Google Meet, and I'm going to click Join or Start a Meeting. And I'm just going to give it the nickname of, say, Stretch Breakout. Click Continue. And then it's going to open this new Google Meet for me, so I can pre-prepare this before the lesson. And I'm going to click Join Now, just like I did before. And now I get to take the joining information. So you can see here, it has the link for the Google Meet. So I'm just going to highlight that, and I'm going to copy it. So Command C if you're on a Mac computer, Control C if you are on any other computer. Then I'm going to close that window. If you do close that window and forget to copy the link, don't worry. If you just go to the bottom left-hand corner, click Stretch Breakout, and then it's got the link in there, so you can take it from there. And then what I can do is, and going back to something that we learned right at the start of this session, is I can go back to the Google Classroom, and I'll just present it for you here. I can go back to the Google Classroom and post it just for those students. So just like we did earlier in the session, if I click Material, and then I might want to call this Stretch Breakout Room, and it's just for those specific students who need the stretch in this example. So let's say it's just Jess and Laura. And then I'm going to add link and paste the link to that breakout room in there. And it's just for those students. I'm going to click post, and then those students can only see that. So I can inform them. I can say, so I could say in the Google Meet lesson, I could say, okay, so for those students who are going to be joining the stretch breakout room, go to your Google Classroom and you will see the link. Other students won't see that link, like we've already said. If I want to do that with support as well, it's a great way to do that. I could also just create another breakout room just for a way for students to come in and ask questions. So if I'm setting them off on a piece of work, I think this will be a great opportunity to show you this lesson plan. So if I share this is in the slides that you're going to get for this session. Now this is a synchronized lesson with differentiation built in. And this is kind of the template for a lot of the lessons that I and the teachers at my school do when they use Google Meet. So we always start off with some interleaved questions, some recap questions that test knowledge from previous lesson and previous terms. We tend to use a Google form quiz for that. So it'll just be a quick 3, 4, 5 question Google form quiz that we post onto the Google Classroom. And as soon as we come into the Google Meet, we say, right, in your Google Classroom is the Google form quiz to start the lesson off. And that straight away in that first 5 minutes. And that means that, because there's a lot of setting up for this kind of thing, isn't there? Students are getting set up, teachers getting all of their resources ready, especially if you've just come out of another live lesson as well. It allows you to have that 5 minutes at the start to get set up while students are doing those questions. And if that's part of your routine, you'll get to a point, like I'm sure you know, that you won't even have to tell them. They'll just know, right, at the start of a lesson, I go into Google Classroom, I go into the Google Meet, then open the Google Classroom, do the interleave questions for the first 5 minutes. Just buys you that bit of time at the start of a lesson. And then also you can have a look at the responses page as soon as you're set up, and you have all of the analytics of how the students have answered the questions. And I think from that moment there, you begin to identify which students am I going to possibly have to take out to stretch, or which students am I going to have to possibly take out to support. Okay. Then we move into 15 minutes of new content. So whether that just be the teacher explaining or showing a video, or however that's done. And we normally have an e-workbook. So it's normally in Google Docs or Google Sheets, a workbook that they can open and work in. And that's recorded. So you can see at the top there, I've put record, because we record that bit of the Google Meet, the actual content bit, and then we use it. So we create YouTube playlists that are unlisted, so the public can't see them, but our students can see them with the link, so that we've got those resources and students can revisit the content, especially for those, because I guess in these times, even if you're doing a live synchronous lesson, there are always going to be students who can't make it for various reasons. So things might be going on at home or anything like that. So it's a way for those students to be able to access the content at a later time, and for revision as well. So we put these playlists together so that when students get to exam times and they're starting to revise, which they are at the moment, our year 11s getting ready for their GCSE exams, they can go back, access them, and use them as a revision resource. So amazing to be able to record that, and you can do that within the Google Meet as well. And we right at the beginning of the lockdown back in March, we, as so many of us were kind of learning different strategies of how we wanted the whole school to use these tools, and we didn't start recording them straight away, and I regret that so much, because there were a lot of teachers delivered content and it just kind of went out there and wasn't recorded, and we could have them kind of banked now that we could reuse and students could use. So I think that's a really important feature. For the differentiation, I think now that you've identified your students who you're going to have to do a bit of reteach or stretch with, then it splits after this 15 minutes. I think then if you've got students who are who have understood and they're ready to get on with the work, you can set them off then. You can kind of give them, so I put there 30 minutes. You can set them off, give them the 30 minutes to go off and actually do the tasks that you would like them to do, to apply the knowledge that they've just learned. While that's happening, you could then use that breakout room style dialogue with the students that you want and who you've identified. So I've put at the bottom here this other arrow down to, so just for example, I've put struggling students. It could be students you want to stretch. So struggling students then move to a new Google Meet so that the teacher can address any misconceptions and support them. So it might just be a quick 10 minutes in another Google Meet, right? I say that you didn't understand this. Let me just go over it again. And then you're assessing some knowledge in real time over a video call. And then you can then get them back on track with what the rest of the class are doing. And then I've just put in there the structure of the rest of the lesson for you. So we would then normally, so when the teacher has kind of stopped with those students, stopped offering the support and stopped any challenge, the students are just now getting on with the work. Then Google Classroom especially is amazing for this. Also Microsoft Teams. You can then jump in to their, especially if you've got it on the Google Classroom as a Google Doc, a Google slide, you can jump into their work in real time. You can actually see them typing in real time, and then you can give some feedback to individual students in the moment. And as all teachers know, if then you kind of say the whole class is struggling, you could then just pull them back into the Google Meet, have that conversation where you address overall misconceptions. You could also use that time, and I've put it in this template as well, to create a bit of a whole class marking sheet. And I like to do that in a Google slide. So I'll just open a blank Google slide, and I'll just, as I'm looking through various students' work, I will just make some notes of where some common misconceptions are, some students that I'd like to give some praise to, maybe some spelling and grammar errors. And then what I'll do is I'll pull them back in for that last 15 minutes and I'll present through the Google Meet that slide with them. And I'll just say, look, these are some of the misconceptions that I noticed. Well done to those students. And I will give them then the last 15 minutes to go back and address any misconceptions. Okay, so I think we use this template and it works really well for us. Obviously, you got to find what works well with you, but I just wanted to share that with you to show how a live synchronous lesson can work, how it can be structured, and with that differentiation inbuilt into it. And that's what I want to share with you today. So those 3 different ways to differentiate online. And we've got a couple of minutes left. If anyone's got any questions, please do put them in the chat. It would be great to hear from you. While you're having a think about that, I'm just going to remind you of the hybrid learning webinar series that you can all access. And the link for that will be on the website where you're accessing these links. And it's amazing series there where you can go more in depth into some of these tools and to some of the practices that are happening where teachers are in a position where they're teaching students in front of them live and online at the same time. And also all of the resources from this session and from all of the sessions you've been involved in today are going to be on the website as well, that you can go back and revisit at any time. And I've got a question. Just Carol saying, can't wait to get started with pathways. Carol, I love that. And even just you saying you're going to go away and play around with it, like, really excites me, because like I said at the start, if there's one thing that I'd love you to take away from this, it's that Google Form pathways. I think it's got the chance to revolutionize how students learn online, especially in an asynchronous way. Okay, we're coming up to 1/2 the hour now. So if there are no questions, okay, how do you see pathways evolving in the next year? Thanks, Michael. I guess I really like. I think that the tools are there for it to be able to make a big impact now. And I really like, it's quite a recent feature that Google have put into the Google Forms, but being able to import, I think that's a big time saver for teachers, because building some of these Google Forms can take some time, but being able to import, which is quite a new feature, I think is amazing and saves teachers a lot, saves me a lot of time anyway. I'd love to see more examples. I talk about this a lot. It's like one of these things that I love talking about, but I would love to see teachers share an example. So if you do use the pathways by creating sections in a Google form, please do get in contact with me on Twitter and show me your examples, and then I can show other teachers who I speak to as well, just to share how much it's having an impact. Okay, I think that's the end. So it's been amazing to join you today. This is my last session of the day. So it's been amazing to join with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of it. And please do get in contact on Twitter if you want to continue this conversation. Well, have a lovely day, everyone. Thank you very much.